Hello to everyone, and thank you very much for making the time to join this webinar on digital transformation of postal operators. My name is Doreen Zhao, and I'm in charge of knowledge management and marketing for MSC Anglophone Africa, and I'll be your MC for our workshop today. Now, allow me to quickly take you through our program for this session. We will kick off with some opening remarks by Michael Wigand, who is a director, financial services, for the poor at Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Thank you, Michael, for joining us. After this, we will move to a 3-round of conversations with our panelists on the opportunities, competitive advantages, challenges, and business models for postal operators, digitization, and the way forward. This session will be moderated by Juliet Ongwae. She's a DFS specialist here at MSC. Now, at this point, allow me to introduce our esteemed lineup of panelists for this workshop. We'll start off with Victoria Griffith. She's a program officer, financial services for the poor, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Welcome, Victoria. We have Jayanthi Venkatramu, CEO, India Post Payment Bank. Welcome, Jayanthi. And then we have Siva Somansandram, Directorate of Policy, Regulation and Market, DPRM, Postal Union. Welcome, Siva. And then lastly, we have Raphael Lepolu. He's the CEO of Kenya Post Office Savings Bank. Welcome, Raphael. Now, in between the 3 rounds of discussions, we shall have a brief Q&A session. Please just use the chat box function to drop in your questions as we move along. And then what we'll do, we'll consolidate and address them as much as time will allow in between the sessions. Now, after we go through the 3 rounds of discussions, we'll bring the workshop to an end with some closing remarks by Graham Wright, who is the Group Managing Director at MSC. Now, that's just a quick highlight of how the session will go. For now, allow me to call on Michael Wigand, who is a Director, Financial Services for the Poor at Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, to give us some opening remarks. Welcome, Michael.
Good morning, and good morning, good evening, everyone, depending on where you are in the world. As you can tell from the dark room, it's still early in the morning here in Seattle. It's a real pleasure for me to be here. Microsave is a close and valuable partner for us, and we really value the work they do and appreciate pulling together this series. We think that the postal services can play a really important role in financial inclusion, which the team that I had at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is focused on bringing all adults globally into the formal financial system. At last measure, the World Bank measures financial inclusion every 3 years. And in 2017, still over 30% of adults globally were financially included. So well over 1 billion adults still don't have access to even the most basic formal financial account and financial services. But this is actually up from 50% only 6 years earlier. So the world has made tremendous progress in bringing adults into the financial system across all income ranges. Where we see a big disparity still in virtually all countries is between urban customers and rural customers. And that's because the challenge of distribution and reaching customers in rural areas is a big challenge. We've analyzed a number of small, innovative financial services companies that have the economics to serve the poor. They have a much lower cost base than traditional banks. And in these companies, more than 60% of the cost is that last mile reach. How do they reach the customers out where they are? And that remains the biggest challenge. That's the challenge that Victoria, who you'll be hearing from later, that's the challenge that she works on our team at the Gates Foundation. But it's really very difficult. Traditional banks don't have the reach and don't have the economics to serve the poor in rural areas. So we've known for a long time that would not be the solution. In many countries, they've relied on agents, small micro businesses, either dedicated to providing financial services or providing financial services alongside other activities. In much of the world, and beginning in most notably in Kenya, it was mobile service operators, mobile telephone operators that provided financial services that had the reach to reach the poor. And so they used the small shops that sold usually prepaid mobile cards as the same agents to provide cash in and cash out and sign people up for these basic bank accounts. But there's real challenges to the economics of making that work, because essentially the money that they hold in their accounts is inventory for them. And these are very small businesses with limited margins. And the ability to have another product that's not really earning profit for them, it's just cash in an account that they can then transfer to their customers, ends up being very costly and prevents a lot of them from providing these services. We've already seen in some cases, and I've had the privilege of going to some rural villages in India to see the India Post Savings Bank operate. They're out, in many countries, they've got tremendous reach out into the very rural areas, into the poorest villages. But beyond that, because of the trust that Postal Service employees have in the community, they can reach consumers, they can help them with financial transactions in a way that other local merchants maybe can't. And because they're employees of the post office and not self-employed, they don't bear a lot of the costs. And so the economics are very different in terms of what these Postal Service employees and the Postal Service in general is able to do. And we see this around much of the world, in the developing world as well. The fact that post offices have been able to provide banking services with a very different set of economics. So we're excited about it. We've worked with the United Postal Union for some time to explore ways that postal services can be leveraged to meet the needs of the poor. And we're excited about the discussion today, getting into some of those details. Clearly, technology will play a big role, but to provide these services safely and efficiently, cybersecurity is an increasing concern. But there are technologies available. There's data analytics available, and I think some of the panelists will be talking about that today. So we think there's an exciting opportunity. It's not trivially easy to take advantage of and to do well, but I think when done well, it can have huge impacts. Just to give you a sense of why this is important, McKinsey Global Institute a number of years ago estimated that by including adults in the formal financial system, just in the developing world, it could add $3.7 trillion to global GDP. So it has huge economics impact. But we only need to look to this last year under the global pandemic to see how important these services are. The World Bank, virtually every country in the world tried to pay money to its citizens over this past year to help mitigate the economic impacts of the COVID pandemic. And it's quite striking for those countries that had moderate or high levels of financial inclusion and a ID system in place to identify their systems, to identify their citizens. They were able to get payments out to their citizens within a couple of months. 95% of countries in that category got payments out by June of this past year. Of those countries that didn't have financial inclusion and a database to identify their citizens, 95% were unable. They stated the intention of making payments to their citizens, but were unable to do it. So this is another example of how financial inclusion really enables governments to be much more effective, for economies to be resilient to shocks. And I think it was just a striking example of how important financial inclusion is. So I wish all of you good luck today. Enjoy the conference. But certainly good luck. You have a really important potential role to play in creating much more dynamic economies where you are and helping all citizens of your country become more resilient and able to move out of and stay out of poverty. So thank you very much for inviting us to participate today.
Great. Thank you so much, Michael. Thank you so much for setting the stage for us to now start having this conversation. And without any further ado, we shall move on to our panel discussion led by Juliet Ongwai. She's a DFS specialist here at MSc. So let me invite Juliet. Juliet, welcome.
Thank you very much, Doreen, and thank you, Michael, for that. I think it has set the context in regards to the role the Post can play in supporting financial inclusion and also the need for them to digitize. So I think that already sets a good stage in terms of some of our questions today. So I will quickly just jump into the pandemic, and you did touch on that a little bit, and just to understand how the Posts, have been getting through the pandemic, and also how they are finding a new purpose, because the pandemic has revealed the essential nature of the postal industry, especially with providing last mile in terms of digital financial services. So I will start with you, Victoria. So the pandemic has provided a great opportunity for digital financial services and e-commerce. We're seeing a lot of e-commerce activity coming up. What are some of the strategies that can shape the future of postal digital transformation?
Thank you, Juliet. I appreciate it. I think that there are both internal and external strategies for postal operators to consider. And I'll start with the external because I think they're most promising and exciting. First of all is partnerships, taking the trust and reliability that postal operators have as part of their reputation and thinking about who you might partner with to either bring new innovations to market or perhaps working with some agile technologists to help you create both mail and non-mail services that provide a better value to your customers. E-commerce is certainly a really exciting area for partnerships. There's tremendous opportunity there as more customers are going online during the pandemic. E-commerce operators are desperate to find good, low-cost operators who can get out to last mile for delivery. Excuse me. Internally, thinking about focusing on the customer, so really looking to understand the customer's experience, how they interact with your services and products is a great strategy to try to understand what new services and products you might be able to deliver to them that they need. A big piece of this is leveraging your data. Postal operators, like all of us, I think, are sitting on mounds and mounds of information, and a serious strategy around data analytics will help understand what your customers are doing, allow you to provide better data to these partners that you might work with, and really create better opportunities, particularly when it comes to DFS.
Thank you very much. Now, Raphael, Michael actually mentioned that there's a difference between, say, a provider or a postal operator or postbank that has started that digital journey and, the ones that hadn't, especially during the pandemic. So what are some of the challenges that you have faced during the pandemic, and what are some of the strategies you've put in place to handle the changing demand?
Raphael,
Raphael?
Unmute.
Sorry about that. Hello, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Juliet, for the opportunity to be here and to share some of our challenges. I'm delighted to be here today to join this important brainstorming session, and just to express my gratitude to Microsoft for including us in this program. Just to understand maybe the challenges, it's good to understand the background of who we are, how big we are, and how impacted we are. We have a branch network of 97 branches with over 700 agents, with access to over 2,700 ATMs. And you can see we have a very big geographical spread. So any impact that was going to come through our customers and our staff was going to be major and it was going to be felt. I'll start first by just outlining the effects of the pandemic generally to the sector of which we were hit. And I would just like to point out a few things. Some of the containment measures that were put in place by the government actually affected the whole country, and the whole socioeconomic norms were really hit and changed. And like other parts of the world, those restrictions in movement from one county or one region to another, which affected trade and which affected people's daily ability to generate income. There was introduction of curfews, meaning that businesses which are operating at night now could not be able to operate. And this had an effect of stopping those people who were on a 24-hour economy, which shrank to a 12-hour economy. And income generating activities actually shrank. Social gatherings were also limited. So there's reduction also in public transport. So people who were in the transport services were also affected. So all this meant that there was little or little income to even think about putting money aside. What happened is there was a slowdown in the economic activities, which affected people's livelihoods. So as an institution, we were affected in terms of the people who are our customers who not generate income. And this also now asked us to rethink how do we get people to even be able to come to the bank. Most of us in the corporate world and being a government bank, we had to follow what the government has prescribed in terms of social distancing, all those protocols that had been put in place, we had to effect them in the workplace. Meaning now there's additional costs in terms of having those facilities, temperature gauges, sanitizers, water for washing, and just sensitizing our clients on how they're supposed to even interact with us when they come to our banking notes. What that meant is, as you say, trying to get this customer on the last mile where we were really very active. There was reduced numbers of customers who were being acquired because our staff would not go out there to get these customers on board. There was no physical activity. Another key thing that happened, as I mentioned earlier, there was reduced revenues and incomes due to reduced transactions. Money now could not move as fast as they could, and that's why most of us resorted to digital platforms to address this mode of transacting and just to keep the economy going. Staff productivity was also affected because suddenly we had to social distance even in the offices, create additional space, and that's now staff to work on shifts. So suddenly productivity on staff just went down because we couldn't have the full complements coming to the offices. Basically what this meant is in terms of cost of doing business, it shot up while getting little money coming in. Some of the strategies we had in place to review this was to make sure that our customers felt safe when they came to our branches, and also just became aggressive and pushed our customers to utilize the digital service delivery that we already had in place. What happened now is we had to make this now very secure and very easy to use. So a lot of training had to go to these customers, and a lot of information we had to push to the customers to understand how to use like the USSD platform which you have, which is *498. So a lot of education and financial literacy just to tell the customers this is how to operate this form of new service delivery, how to withdraw But this also comes with challenges because the older customers who we have who are not very tech savvy are also really affected in that regard. These are the customers who normally feel very comfortable. And if you look at our profile of customers, some of them who we pay, the people who are on pension, the people who are, it's a government program which is called Jamii, these are the old people. They are not very comfortable on the digital space. So they had to come like with their children just to learn how to use this platform. So a lot of education needed to go through. We had a lot of increased communication to our customers, just to create that connection between us and the customer to ensure that they know we are still operating, that there are other ways of them getting access to their funds. And we had to really push a lot of, went to the radio stations and TV just to educate and tell the public and our customers how to use and utilize those digital platforms. So those are some of the strategies that we had to come up to go around the limited movement that was affected by the restrictions that had been put in place. So those are some of the opportunities that we came up with as Postman, just to ensure that we continue serving our customers in that space.
Okay, thank you. At least I'm hearing issues around training and financial literacy. So it's making sure we don't leave the customer behind even as we digitize. Venkat, now over to maybe a more positive angle. What are some of the opportunities that the pandemic offered for IPPB?
Sure. Thank you, first of all, for giving me this opportunity to be presenting our case and our insights and experiences from India, and to tell you the pandemic has actually opened up a lot of opportunities for India Post, and it's been a lifeline for the citizens at large, given the fact that a lot of financial institutions and their agents who are operating across the country were completely shut because of the pandemic and because of the lockdown. And that actually paved way for the India Post and its warriors on the ground to extend whatever possible services that can be given. Before getting into the actual impact, I just wanted to give you an overview of the India Post and India Post Payment Bank, how we operate. While India Post has a massive network of 155,000 plus post offices across the country, and which is by any comparison, it's one of the highest as compared to any other commercial bank which is operating in the country, which is almost 5 times of the branch network. And at the same time, it reduces the complexity of accessibility towards banking services. So which means the banking services in the country are now available within a range of 5 to 10 kilometers. So which means the distance towards the accessibility per se has reduced. So what actually happened with the establishment of India Post Payment Bank is about the digital transformation of the postal services, the way these services were extended to the larger public, and at the same time, extension of new products and services to the customers of postal network, and also to the public at large. So these are some of the developments which happened much before the pandemic. But actually, the real spurt in terms of transaction volume has come during the pandemic. As I was mentioning, during pandemic, since the entire paraphernalia of financial institutions got shut, and this became the only lifeline in terms of public getting both cash in, cash out, and also availing various other services like bill payment, money transfer services. And not only that, a lot of subsidy related payments, direct benefit transfers that are to be made available to the public were routed through our system. And during pandemic, government has introduced and declared some additional subsidy, especially for farmers and other segment of customers. And even that got served through India Post network. And that's where actually the entire network played a very, very significant role during the entire pandemic. And it aided the public. So having said that, we in India Post Payment Bank are trying to digitally transform the entire postal services, because if you look at the kind of services and products that are made available through postal network, has very, very close linkage to the entire banking system. Thanks to the technology, the barriers, whatever are there, are now getting diminished. And that's where we would want to take that extra leap in terms of bringing the entire postal transformation of providing the required services to the customers. And to elaborate more on this, what we're trying to do is integrate the entire postal network to the larger payment network ecosystem which is available in the country. Be it immediate transfer of money across various banking institutions, or receiving money, or transacting on various form factors and transacting on various digital channels. So these are some of the activities which we have undertaken. And over a period of time, we should be able to integrate this entire network, larger network, into the larger financial ecosystem. And more importantly, we would like to serve this as a physical marketplace, wherein you consolidate a set of services, which could be both financial as well as non-financial. And this becomes an interoperable marketplace where, irrespective of the fact which bank you bank with, you can always come to post office to avail banking services. That's the model that we've embarked upon. And I'm proud to say that we are today serving 40 crore customer base, and the kind of transaction volume that happens through our network is almost 600 billion on a monthly basis. So that's the kind of volume that we are looking at. And this will immensely help in terms of taking the entire postal financial services to the next level. So to say, the pandemic has helped us a lot in terms of coming closer to the customers and serving them. And I think the visibility and the brand value of the postal services as a whole has increased by many notches in this pandemic. And that's one of the positive takeaways that we look at this pandemic.
Thank you very much. I think what I've picked up is creating a digital marketplace and also visibility, increasing your visibility. So we'll circle back to that later on in the session. I want to move to Siva and just talk about the support that UPU has been giving the postal operators, especially in offering inclusive social, logistic, and financial services during this pandemic.
Thanks very much, Juliet. And let me begin by doing two things. Firstly, I want to thank MSC for the invitation to the UPU to participate in this virtual workshop. It's a real pleasure to be here. And unfortunately, my video link isn't working very well today. I'm having some issues with the internet. Secondly, I think it might be helpful to inform the audience what the UPU is, just in case you haven't heard of it before. The UPU is a specialized agency of the UN that is responsible for the treaties, standards, and the operational frameworks that govern and support the exchange of international mail between 192 member states. And in that context, its remit also broadly extends to most matters connected to the post. From the perspective of the UPU, one of the key highlights of the pandemic, Juliet, has been the extent to which governments across the world are relying on the core logistics, financial services, and network reach competencies of the post to provide a whole range of services in these very difficult times. In line with this need, postal services in many countries have been deemed essential and thus excluded from the general lockdown restrictions that were applicable to most other businesses. At the UP, we typically ensure that we support our member countries and their postal operators on two separate axes. Firstly, by providing a platform for the development of appropriate regulatory and policy frameworks, as well as for best practice sharing. And secondly, by providing technical assistance to Post to help improve their services. In the context of the pandemic, we continue to focus on both these axes, but obviously with a greater attention to some of the more immediate and short to medium impacts of the pandemic on postal operations and the needs of our member countries. So dealing with the first axis, which is the platform perspective, I'd like to highlight a couple of things that the UP has done and is still doing. As many of you would be aware, firstly, with the pandemic, air travel was significantly impacted. And this meant that the exchange of international mail across borders got severely challenged. We've been actively creating and facilitating mechanisms by which alternative delivery channels, be it by road, rail, or sea, are brought to the attention of postal operators and can be accessed. We're also actively working with a range of other stakeholders in the postal supply chain, such as IATA, the airlines, and the World Customs Organization, with a view to looking at adopting some of the out-of-the-box solutions to the current challenges to postal logistics, such as converting air cargo planes into mail carriers. Another example of our work in creating appropriate cooperation and dialogue platforms is the ongoing debate at a policy level on what the future of the universal service provision and postal services should look like. We obviously have augmented this policy development axis with our range of technical assistance facilities, and these facilities cover different domains, including but not limited to social services, financial services, and trade. Thus, for example, in the field of social services, with the support of the Japanese government, we've got a project called the UPU Postal Social Services Project, which aims to increase the visibility and involvement of posts in health, education, government, and community services. Now, the reason why we're doing this is that many of the social services offered by posts have taken on a greater significance as the impacts of restricted travel and social isolation have increased. You would have noticed that posts across the world have responded by offering new or adapted services, such as the home delivery of medicines, example in Australia, Rwanda, and Ukraine. The transport of COVID-19 testing kits, we have examples in Bangladesh and the UK. We have the sale of PPE equipment in France and Costa Rica. So there's a whole range of things that posts are involved with when it comes to social services and health. And what we've tried to do is develop information channels to capture and share many of these examples so that there is a ready platform by which knowledge and best practice experience can be promulgated across the postal community. We are intending to publish a guide on this very shortly, which will include a variety of case studies, explore policy and strategy considerations and opportunities for future innovation. Another example, Juliet and colleagues, is the work that we're doing in relation to SMEs, small and medium enterprises. Now, during the pandemic, posts across the world provided a lot of support to SMEs to help them actually become e-commerce businesses to survive the lockdown of the physical economy. In industrialized countries such as Spain and Switzerland, as well as developing countries such as Burkina Faso, Cambodia, Costa Rica, Thailand, Tunisia, and Zimbabwe, just to name a few. Posts have actually supported local artisans to sell online for the first time and transform into e-commerce SMEs. Posts have provided marketplaces, the supporting financial services, pickup and delivery logistics, and even government subsidies to enable them to trade online. Many of these posts have actually relied on the UPU's policy and regulatory advice in relation to their digital transformation journey, and they've used the UPU cybersecurity framework, which is commonly referred to as .post, to protect their marketplaces and related internet services. Of course, last but not least, in the domain of financial services, we're seeing arrangements across the postal network to facilitate cash in, cash out services, be it relating to pensions, other social benefits and savings through postal branches or through postal employees in ways that are mindful of the dictates of the pandemic. So you've heard the experiences of both Rafael and Venkat in relation to their respective postal banks and what they're doing. And this has been replicated in many other parts of the world. So in essence, what's happening is we're having posts adopt restricted hours of operations for post office branches, allowing them to still remain open but accessible to the most vulnerable. Also delivering cash to the doorsteps of people, especially the elderly. And two great examples are India and Pakistan, where postal employees are delivering cash to the doorsteps of citizens from basically from pensions to other social benefits. Again, the UP is supporting these efforts through both its knowledge platforms and technical assistance exits. So in short, there is a whole lot going on with posts across the world in this time around, particularly because of the pandemic. The UP is very much part of this story, helping our member countries and their postal operators to better coordinate and formulate the postal response to the pandemic, and of course, ultimately to meet the objectives of governments and the needs of citizens. Thank you, Juliet.
Thank you very much, Siva. Before I go to the next round, which is now just looking beyond pandemic and looking at now the actual digital transformation journey. Do we have any questions, Doreen?
Yes.
Can I take one from the participants?
Yes, let me pick one question that has come through. Someone is asking that most of the postal companies operating in rural Africa are government-owned. Digital transformation of these companies for financial inclusion agenda will need an effective PP. Can you share any knowledge guide on this? Rafael, maybe you can take this question.
I'm so sorry. I got off mute by mistake.
Okay. Thank you for that question. As rightly put it, like for us, we are a 100% government-owned institution. So for us to really go digital, we need to go out there and see what the market has to offer. The good thing is because of the processes that we use for procurement, we are able to go out there and procure services from third-party providers who are able to give us these digital platforms which we're able to incorporate. So that's the part of private partnerships that we can be talking about. We, as a country, Kenya is well known for its financial digital transformation, especially on mobile banking, and we are really way ahead in terms of offering those financial services through the mobile, and most of the banks have hopped onto that, and we've not been left behind. So definitely, the best you can get is from outside there. I think the approach for us is just to go out there, seek out who is the best provider for that service, and then we procure it.
Doreen, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. So thank you very much, Rafael. There's a second question here coming from Marine. Marine is saying speakers have talked about payments, transfers, etc. Are some of your institutions developing a credit offer for your customers, be it digital credit or more traditional credit? Let me push this to Venkat, please. Venkat, maybe you can take this question. Thank you.
Yeah. No. In fact, it's a very, very pertinent question, and we are thinking on providing these kind of services. But the only challenge that we have by design is that as a payment bank, we cannot lend. But at the same time, it does not deter us from forging a partnership with the service providers. So what we are doing is in terms of utilizing our network or leveraging our physical network, opening it up to the lenders, where using our platform, we can generate leads for all those lenders to provide the credit facilities. So having said that, this can work on assisted digital model,
Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Venkat. There are a few more questions, but I think we'll take that after the second round of discussion. So I'll give back the session to Juliet. Over to you, Juliet.
Okay, thank you, Doreen. We can start with Raphael. So you did mention some challenges that you're having. I think they are due to the pandemic and even, beyond that as part of your digital transformation journey. So looking at probably when you're introducing the mobile banking, the agency network or agency services, what are some of the maybe cultural changes that were required to be able to facilitate this and be able to scale this?
Thank you, Juliet. As I said, maybe I'll talk a little bit about the history of the journey for Postbank. We started the journey in 2006 on the restructuring process, just to engineer the bank and create a network of outreach of network of ATMs. In 2008, Postbank was one of the first. We've been really pioneers. We started the paperless transaction business model, which we're using the POSs. So customers would not need to come and fill in forms to deposit or withdraw, and start using their cards. And this model led to us being recognized by various authorities like the ICT for the good work that we've done. Around 2009, we started Postbank, what we call Postbank Mashinani. This is basically Postbank on the ground, as to just try and translate it basically to English. It's called, this is what you are using to reach the people really on the ground. Around 2009, we came with Patacash, which is the mobile banking, which you use the codes for withdrawing. This is the USSD. And we started also offering those services. And as a government bank where there's a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of changes that needed to be done, there's always a mentality in Kenya that government is a bit slow, staff in government are not really up to speed like in the commercial sector. And those are some of the cultural changes that we needed to undertake. As you look at how fast this technology is evolving, from where we were and today where the banks are with the mobile apps, there's been a total transformation in that space. So we needed to have a lot of culture change, inject new blood into our organization, because suddenly the mode of delivery of service is not the normal cashiering, just having a cashier paying, payout, and the model now changed to digital. So we needed to have a culture change so that we integrate these two aspects. People who understand the technology and people who've been there in the system, so that we might lead to what I can call differing point of entry for delivery of this service. What the bank also did, we partnered with these providers to hasten this change and to basically scale up these services to reach the ground. And then also, when you look at our customers, because most of them now had been subjected to this new technology, the payment methods, the withdrawal methods, the remittance method through mobile banking, customers had become enlightened and their demands became diverse. For us, our customers also mirrored that diversity. there are those tech-savvy university students whose loans were being channeled maybe through us. Those are very, very tech-savvy. Then you have the people in the markets, the old mamas and the old women and gentlemen in the market who are not so tech-savvy. So we needed to see how to merge that so that our customers are able to still operate those services irrespective of their age brackets and irrespective of their technology, how they've been exposed to technology. The cost also involved became a bit also high because we need now to get into the market, train our customers and train our staff. So that culture change also hit our bottom line. Sometimes this offering of this service through the normal service would not have been able unless we went out there to train them. Adoption of technology also posed some risks, especially now that Kenya is well known for mobile money. I think if I speak to this was a Kenyan audience, I'll be telling them about what happens in committee where people have SIM cards and they keep hacking onto people's phones and stealing money from those accounts of people who are not very, very tech savvy and people who are easily duped. So we needed to also go through another aspect of just sensitization and culture change around security around your phone so that people do not just give their ID numbers and telephone PIN numbers to people who are just calling them. So there's a whole lot of changes in that culture space just to ensure that people come up to speed and understand the risks that are there. And with the increased push for these channels, as far as we were growing on this end of trying to bring in new customers, the fraudsters are also basically getting their act together and trying to defraud our customers. So we need to have another level of security input, not just at our end, but also to sensitize our customers. Basically, that meant we need to reskill our people, reskill our customers, and also just retool our employees to be able to perform these challenging functions that were coming in place. Another key thing that's also coming through is data management. As I said, people are easily duped in terms of the data they had. They couldn't keep it a secret. Some of them couldn't keep their PIN number secret. And it becomes a challenge, especially for a society like ours, where you have very educated young people who are not employed, and they become a bit crafty and they can at times try and do a few things which are not right. So basically, all that has been a culture change, not just the customers and our employees and how we need to do, but also on the fraudsters on this other side who now saw an opportunity that was presented to them on customers who are not well versed with this new technology and new ways of transacting their financial businesses. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll move over to Venkat. I think you probably had similar challenges, but I just want to broaden the scope. So as you're providing last mile financial services across India, what are some of your key lessons learned in terms of overcoming challenges such as interoperability, digital identity, and authentication, identifying and managing partnerships, and also just building on the trust, given the low literacy levels. So building trust in digital financial services.
Okay. So in terms of last mile connectivity, one of the challenges that we face is mainly on availability of cash, number one. And the other one is about network connectivity, because when we are operating in difficult terrains, it becomes much more challenging in terms of providing these services, because the model in which we operate is completely paperless, and everything is digital, assisted digital. So availability of network connectivity is very, very important. So in some of the places we do find difficult in finding a proper connectivity. That apart, on the awareness aspect, that apart, the availability of cash. So for instance, the demand for cash withdrawal at times becomes very high, where because of certain limitations, we are not able to provide that cash. But to a large extent, that is also is locally, and able to meet the gaps wherever we come to know that there is a requirement of cash, and also based on certain trending, the past trend, cash part. Apart from this, on the literacy front, financial literacy front, we do undertake a lot of campaigns. But what we find more challenging is in terms of pushing customers from cash to digital. While instances like COVID and demonetization have moved public to a large extent to cashless, but at the same time, it doesn't take much time for, again, going back to the cash. I think that's been one of the challenge. And the other major challenge, what we find in a country like India, is about the mobile, the accessibility of mobile. So especially in rural households, we are not able to penetrate in terms of opening more number of accounts just because of mobile number. Why? Because it's important that every individual has a mobile number for opening an account, not only for receiving various alerts pertaining to the bank transactions, but also for receiving certain one-time passwords which will have to be shared at the time of the transaction. So that's been another challenge in terms of availability of mobile phones, and also availability of smartphones is another aspect, which, if available, possibly some of the customers would be able to carry out transactions on a mobile phone. And we also see a lot of gender disparity in terms of when it comes to usage of mobile phones, especially the younger customers would like to use more and more mobile-based transactions, but whereas the older generation may not be very comfortable dealing with mobile phone and mobile apps. Apart from this, what we also see is the language, the vernacular mode that is available in various communications. So that is more important, whenever we are extending these kind of services in terms of establishing that connect with the rural customer. So that is something which we have done as a part of our mobile app, where it is available in various languages, so that customer is able to understand the nomenclature and the jargons that are there in the banking applications. That's it.
Thank you very much. Victoria, I want to ask, and it's just a shift now, we've had a lot of conversation around agile and data, issues with data and even partnerships. How can the postal operators or postal banks leverage on the dynamic growth we are seeing in data analytics, in artificial intelligence and open APIs, the emerging technologies?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of really exciting technologies coming out. I would say that from a foundational perspective, it's very important to start with digitizing your information, digitizing all of your systems. That gets you to a point where you can really take advantage of data analytics. Like probably most of us on the phone, postal operators are, they're sitting on mounds and mounds of information, and sometimes it's very hard to know what to do with that data that you have and how to make it accessible at your fingertips. Really investing in a strategy or working with partners who are experts in data analytics will help you help postal operators develop new services or new products for customers. Whether that's sharing things like address data banks or mail tracking information, Being able to look at that from a big data perspective will allow the development of good solutions to come about. International postal data can be used to look at trends in GDP growth, global trade patterns, demographic movements. But once your systems are fully digitized, it opens the door to more complex systems like open APIs, which are really important for being able to fully integrate with e-commerce partners. Is going to be fundamental if you want to be able to offer e-government services or digital financial services, of course. You can look at a full-fledged postal bank like India Post Payments Bank that Venkat mentioned before. You know, we're delighted that they serve 40 million customers now, half of them women. To me, when I think about that, that's a literal data mine, and the opportunity to eventually be able to take all of that data and help create customized solutions for end customers is going to be a fantastic opportunity. But it requires digitizing all of your services and thinking carefully about data analytics.
Okay, thank you. Siva, we are seeing a lot of development by the postal ecosystem to move towards digital. So what are some of UPU's strategic priorities that will be able to support these developments?
Thanks, Juliet. Look, there's quite a lot of things that are going on in the UPU as well, but and it would be impossible to cover all of them in my response. But perhaps I can perhaps focus on a couple that is that's been of huge importance for the postal community and the way our governments have dealt with the postal sector. First up, I would want to talk about e-commerce, and it's not a trivial point to stress how much e-commerce has actually forced an industry shift, and it's become the top priority for the industry. And this is partly driven by the fact that the majority of growth in the traffic in these days, even before the pandemic, is sort of e-commerce related transactions. And it's just become a lot stronger as a result of the pandemic. When we talk about e-commerce services, it's not just about smarter and more agile local delivery services. It's also about business support, having digital platform services, digital financial services, and e-logistics services. So in essence, we're talking about the full postal value chain. Now, the UPU has prioritized e-commerce these past 4 years. We've had the launch of new services, new postal customs regulations, new interoperator fees that have all been decided in just this last 4 years. And much of this is aimed at accommodating and reflecting the realities of e-commerce. And in particular, as I said, the fact that a significant and growing proportion of international mail flows are now accounted for by parcels and packets containing goods that have had, in some respects, their genesis in an e-commerce related transaction. Another interesting dimension to the e-commerce pillar is the fact that posts across the world are also expanding their business partnerships with a range of big multinational e-commerce companies. So we're very much in support of private-public partnerships, very much in support of partnerships to get across the challenges of financing and technology. And so we see examples of posts tying up with e-commerce companies such as AliExpress, Amazon, JD.com, and Jumia, not only for business growth, but also in terms of technology transfer and market skills. And so you might be asking, what is it that these companies actually find in posts? I mean, it's absolutely true to say that it's the universal reach of the postal network that's valuable to them. And we are at the UPU level, at a multilateral intergovernmental level, looking to create mechanisms and channels by which these wider sector stakeholders can be part of the future of the sector. And these matters will actually be a focus of a ministerial meeting of the UPU later this year. Now, the second pillar, which is, in my view, really quite important and which has been a focus of our member states, is this concept of a seamless postal supply chain. And this, and the idea here is to have an end-to-end postal supply chain, particularly as it relates to international mail, that capitalizes on the ongoing advances in technology and digital services. So, for those of you who are keeping track of this, we've at the UP, we've developed a whole range of digital tools for accessing track and trace of postal items, delivery information, customs document, and basically sharing data across the supply chain. And Victoria is absolutely correct in saying that posts are sitting on a huge amount of big data, which they could quite use effectively to sort of actually expand and better serve their customers. We're helping postal stakeholders deal with all of these issues in different ways. And I think the other angle that's quite important to put on the table is, posts are also very much focused on the interface that they have with their customers. And it's clear that companies and customers across the world expect to interact with a digitized post. That is the way of the world. And in fact, in some research that we did towards the tail end of 2019, and in fact, this was before the pandemic, we had statistics showing that nearly 95% of posts have started providing some form of digitized service. So the shift has clearly begun, and that nearly 43% of posts are seeking to provide some sort of e-commerce related support services through APIs, and nearly 60% of posts offered mobile apps. So posts and postal operators across the world are very much in the digital domain. It's really a question of to what extent they are able to do so and to capitalize on the assets that they might have. I think it's also really important to recognize how much the pandemic has accelerated the digital transformation of postal services. They've had to adopt contactless solutions to protect their workforces. They've had to adopt digital customer services to avoid overcrowding in post offices. So in some ways, there's been such a huge acceleration towards the digitization of posts just to deal with the health and safety consequences of the pandemic. Now, anticipating a lot of this, the UPU has launched a digital transformation and diversification postal services project. And this has been going on for a few years, which is really about making posts ready for e-commerce. And we've got a toolkit called the Digital Readiness for E-commerce Toolkit. It's implemented on a demand-driven basis, and it's funded by donors and partners. And it's really a tool to help posts and governments modernize and digitize their postal services to fit for purpose in this age of e-commerce. And it's about encouraging the creation of digital strategies clearly aligned with government digitization activities and meeting the needs of digital savvy customers. Now, I saw one of the questions on the chat room about partnerships with fintech, the need, the fact that a lot of posts in Africa are owned by governments, and therefore there is a real need for PPPs. The UPU from a global level fully agrees with those things, and in fact it is critical, apart from the support of governments for posts, it's also critical for posts to think out of the box and begin to develop those important partnerships with the private sector. That's pretty much it for me, Juliet, at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Interesting insights, and one of the themes that are running through this whole conversation is on partnerships. And you've just introduced what was going to be my next question, which was partnerships with the fintechs. And I want to throw this to Venkat and see, do you have any partnerships with the fintechs, and what are some of the, options or possibilities for them to leverage for you to leverage on these fintechs to be able to accelerate digital transformation? And also, how do you effectively collaborate, given that, you know, two different types of business models, culture, technology?
Yeah, I think, you know, they build a huge gap in terms of technology. I think today, most of us are really grappling with the procurement of technology, as it was rightly pointed out by Rafael about, you know, procurement part. So one of the advantages that fintechs would bring in is definitely the creation of product. And not only that, today we have larger fintechs who have a readily available pluggable agent management system with a plethora of services available on the platform. So it makes sense for, you know, financial institutions like us to collaborate with these kind of fintechs in terms of availing and leveraging that platform. That apart, fintechs also seem to have cracked the model of the gap that the financial institution seems to be suffering, and also playing the role of an aggregator in terms of integrating various financial services into one platform. For instance, we are tied up with one such fintech where they have integrated financial services like mutual fund, investment into digital gold, and the national pension system, and so on and so forth. So which means with one shot, our customer would be able to invest in, you know, plethora of those products and services, because it immensely increases the number of products and services that are available. Like, as I said, if you have a tie-up with a fintech who is offering an aggregated services platform, so it makes sense for us to plug into that kind of a platform. And the strengths that we bring in terms of network and our reach to the customers, so that exponentially enhances your ability to serve customers with multiple services. Like somebody has rightly pointed out about the cost economics of the service given to this segment of customers. I think one of the challenges that we can overcome in terms of cost economics is by broad-basing the services and products, which could be both financial and non-financial. And in our case, we have also been able to extend certain non-financial services like citizen services, which is called digital life certificate, where the old age pensioners were otherwise supposed to visit their respective employers for providing the age certificate. Now that same thing is happening digitally right at the doorstep, you know, where a postman visits them and completes the digital life certificate within no time. So these are some of the aspects which will come into effect, you know, when you engage with fintechs. Also, the another area where probably, you know, most of the postal companies and banks can actually invest in is like a product company, where if you can create a separate product company, it helps in terms of bridging the gap of attracting the talent for creation of these products. And also it will bring in the agility and take care of your procurement problems. So today the biggest problem that these kind of the postal companies have is tying up with a big tech company through a single system integrator route. Is one, it is increasing cost to a mammoth size, and at the same time it is also becoming complex in terms of managing the technology and products. Today, the cyber security, as Siva rightly pointed out, cyber security is one of the aspects where I don't think the postal companies have the wherewithal in terms of managing. So that's where, you know, banks with right product expertise can manage those set of products, because increasingly the experience and the products become more and more complex with the increase in technology. So that is where, you know, possibly we will have to look at investing in right set of talent in managing the technology, and a need for having a right set of partnerships and collaboration, especially with the fintech.
Yeah, so I'm starting to get the sense that there's probably a role for an accelerator, probably a specialized accelerator that can identify these post-specific needs and, accelerate the fintechs. Victoria, I would like to hear your thoughts around that. Is there a role for such accelerators?
Yeah, I think so, absolutely. There are certainly many fintech accelerators and incubators that are out there, and they're super helpful when it comes to fostering relationships that sort of tie very specialized technology, including security issues that were mentioned earlier. But it's worth spending some time to think about whether you might need something specifically for payment banks. I think I think there's a great opportunity out there to invite third parties to help increase your likelihood of developing products and partnerships that are successful.
Okay, thank you. I think we have, maybe time for about 1 or 2 questions from the participants. Doreen, do you have any questions?
Yes, I have quite a number of them, so I'll just pick 1 or 2. The first one is twofold. So the question goes, are there security issues faced by postal personnel while offering financial services in the rural areas across the globe? And what are the common collaterals used in these rural areas? And what is the effectiveness of the collaterals when it comes to motivating the repayment of credit? Maybe I can push this to Siva. Siva, can you take this?
Thank you, Doreen. So on the question of security, I think one of the biggest challenges that we've seen, at least at a global level, in terms of the discussions that take place in the UPU, and this was a point that Venkat was making, that as postal services become digitized, and this is not just only in relation to financial services, but across the complete value chain of the post, it is true to say, like a lot of other enterprises, there is a risk in terms of cybersecurity. What we are seeing clearly is the varying capabilities of posts in dealing with it. We have the full spectrum, and that's usually a reflection of the development status of posts. So the more developed posts are really in there. They have the capability, they have the capacity, and the financials to be able to undertake and put in place the required cybersecurity measures. And then you have on the other spectrum posts that are just only beginning their digital transformation journey and are potentially at risk through cybersecurity attacks and likewise. And there, what we've tried to do, at least from a UN level, is to provide the tools and platforms to be able to deal with that. We have a domain name called .post, which is backed with state-of-the-art security measures. And we've allowed postal operators seeking to effectively set up shop using that domain name to use those services. And as part of those measures as well, we are conducting cybersecurity training, allowing for exchanges between technology experts and postal operators at a working level to understand and work out what would be the best way of dealing with cybersecurity issues to the extent that it is of huge concern. But it is certainly true to say that there are constraints both on financials and capability and technology understanding, and those gaps need to be filled. And to the extent that you can bring on board public-private partnerships to achieve it, that's great. But if not, I think it's also to the when you have governments as key stakeholders in posts, I think it's also beholden on governments to think about how they can actually equip their posts to deal with these issues. I'm not quite confident in answering the question on collaterals, Doreen, because I don't have that particular expertise at a market level. Perhaps either Venkat or Rafael might be better placed to take that one.
Okay. Maybe Venkat, you can take that part.
Yeah, it's about credit, right? The collaterals for the credit.
Exactly.
Okay. See, when it comes to the rural credit market, one is the agri for the agri produce, whether it is pre-harvest or post-harvest. So in both the cases, you have some sort of security. But having said that, the kind of unsecured lending which normally happens through the microfinance route is something which can definitely be tried through this channel. Because what is more important, you need to understand is that the postman, the postman who actually goes door to door, has much more better connect in terms of understanding these customers, and he's able to better assess the needs of these customers, and that itself becomes a big surrogate for you to really invest in. And that apart, also with a lot of government subsidies passing through these rails, that also becomes another kind of a surrogate where that certain amount of money is coming on a regular basis from the government to these citizens. So why can't we use that as a model for financing these set of customers? Because that in a way will also set in some kind of a reverse savings, which is what we have normally seen in case of microfinance. I think these are some of the models which needs to be worked out. And I'm sure with a proper framework and with a network in place, lenders would be interested to work this out. And one of such projects which the government is working on is about the funding against the DBT benefits which are coming into these accounts. And we're yet to see some traction on this, because this is where we need a lot of collaborations in terms of reducing the costs and working out proper cost economics about the way you can provide nano credit against the money which is coming in as a receivable. And also the kind of subsidies that flow through these accounts can become a surrogate for lenders to lend against. And definitely there is a lot of scope for doing unsecured lending, because collaterals may not be very forthcoming. And also the cost of doing against such collaterals could be very high given the ticket size of the loans. So that's how the market would like to operate.
Great. Thank you so much, Venkat. I think, Juliet, we have time for one more question. This one goes to Raphael. So the question asked, rural youths who are obviously digital savvy are moving to urban centers for greener pastures. They are leaving the aged folks behind. How will digital postal systems for financial inclusion benefit the rural aged who are known not to be digitally friendly? Maybe Raphael, you can take this.
Thank you very much for that question. Yeah, it's true, rural youth are moving to towns, but I think to give an experience of our country where we've had a lot of funding going down back to the villages, we've had the county governments nowadays having a lot of money, which has meant that a lot of youth now are getting employed at that local level. Then there are also programs that the government has put in place, which in Kenya we call it Kazi Mtaani, those social programs where the youth are employed at their areas in those villages. So they've tended to remain there. So a lot of youth are still available at the village level, at that local level, to transact and help this aged population to really transact. Another key thing that's coming through is a lot of education. For us as a country, Kenya has really put in a lot of investments in the education. So be it at the local level and also for adult education. So a lot of literacy has really, literacy training has really gone into place. For us as Post Bank, we really do a lot of financial literacy. And part of it is just to bring our population of customers up to speed with our network and our services. So we've basically done like one-on-one training for most of our customers because of our high network that we have. When you look at our branch network, we have one of the biggest in Kenya. So we are able to reach that last mile and really take our customers through basic training on how maybe to use the phone to transact And also some of the programs that the government has put in place is like we have to really interact with the customer one-on-one, like take their biometrics, you get to use it for future transactional use. So that has meant that we've come into contact with these customers and given us an opportunity to really take them through the basic training on how to utilize the digital platforms that are available. And it's interesting to note in Kenya, especially on the USSD front, most of the customers in the rural village, they found it very easy to use the USSD aspect of the mobile phone, especially on sending money, receiving money. And right now, when you send a known person at home money through the phone, when they hear the phone bleep, they're able to know that all they need is just a PIN to withdraw that money. So because of the simplicity of that ability to transact, it's made it very easy for these customers to really pick up that aspect of managing themselves and managing their money, and also to be able just to bank. So it's really not been a challenge for us here in Kenya, and also as an institution, we've not really faced that challenge. A little bit of it is the ones who've been defrauded, but when you look at it on a scale of 100, only maybe 5% are really struggling, but they're still our customers. But on a scale of around 95 are still able to operate freely. The other 5% are the ones who maybe have other challenges, and they have to come maybe with a child who is in school to help them navigate through the transactions that they need to transact at our branches or with our agents out there. So the ability for them to operate, they've actually managed to have those young children who are still going to school, and then they come maybe on a weekend to transact with their grandparents. So we've not really had that major challenge in that respect. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rafael, for that elaborate answer. I'll hand the session back to Juliet to take us through the final round. Over to you, Juliet.
Okay, thank you very much, and very insightful. I just probably get a parting shot looking at, given the time that we have. And if the panelists can just take 1 minute and tell me, I want to touch on something that Venkat mentioned around increased visibility and how digital transformation has increased the visibility of their services. But this is a different angle. So just looking at how can the postal operators of Postal Bank promote and enhance, the visibility of their role in this digital economy. We are talking about a demographic shift. We are talking about different kinds of customers, a push from, the customers to see you active in the digital economy. So how can you promote and enhance your visibility? I will start with you, Siba. Just 1 minute.
Thank you, Juliet. There's really two things. One is, from our perspective, the integration of POS in national digital strategies is absolutely vital for success. POS must be seen as a key stakeholder for inclusion in the digital economy. Governments are sitting on an asset that is very well placed to assist them in achieving their objectives. They're not doing a great job in actually capitalizing on it. We're trying very hard, working at national levels with development agencies to strengthen this view. And the second thing I would stress is that POS themselves need to start working closely with private partners, local startups, the ICT community more broadly, to be more agile and to accelerate their digital transformation. And it's only through these sorts of things that we'll actually end up with a win-win situation for the national economy, where there is a strong public infrastructure that is digitized with localized solutions to support the whole community. Thank you, Juliet.
Thank you. Short and sweet. Venkat?
Yeah, in terms of creation of visibility, I think, as I said earlier, it's all about leveraging the digital assets and broad-basing the products and services, because today we can dip into the digital technology and integrate into the larger ecosystem. And that's where I think we'll create visibility. And this has been time and again proved in our case, where we not only extend financial services, but also the non-financial services. Like, for instance, there's been one thought which is actually doing rounds in the country about, why can't the postal network register the citizens for getting the COVID vaccine? And we will shortly see that happening. So these are some of the services which will, I think time and again, what we need to look at is we have to look at, what are those services that can be provided to this set of people, given the fact that they are far flung and also not technically savvy. But at the same time, if we can leverage the technology in terms of the assisted digital applications, and through which we can provide these services, whether it is assisted financial services or assisted e-commerce, I think technology that way is a great leveler. I think that's what will help us, create that visibility over a long term.
Thank you. Victoria, just 1 minute.
I think postal operators have distribution networks that are extremely hard for competitors to replicate. I would love to see them leverage their reputation as trusted providers to become the digital financial service providers of choice for vulnerable populations like welfare recipients, civil servants working in rural areas, pensioners, and illiterate populations.
Thank you. Raphael?
Just echo what the speakers have talked about, especially Victoria, especially on the wide network coverage. I think we don't do a lot of justice to ourselves. We have the capital, as Siva said. We should be a trusted institution. We are looked at as a government institution. So we give that stability, that trust. Banking is and handling of financial services is more of trust and stability. So if people or our customers or the population out there views us as being stable and being available, because we are in their faces. There's no place you go in Kenya without a post office. If we go and advertise ourselves just in that medium, people will be able to see our visibility. The thing is, we need to tell them now, we are visible. And these are the services. Visibility is one thing, they can see it there. But what services are we giving them in that locality? So we need to really sell our digital transformation journey to them. What are these services we have? Another key thing that you can see is we've been shying away from the digital media, digital platforms, the websites. We're not having chat boxes, customer contact centers. We're not there on Facebook. I'm sure most of us are not very sure about Instagram. How do we leverage on that to show that we are there, we are able to offer all these services, but just have that visibility and media presence out there talking about the kind of services that we are able to offer. Another key thing that we need to do is forge strong partnerships, especially with the media houses. Let them keep talking about our services. We sort of shy away from telling them that these are the kind of services we are offering. I was looking at it the other day when the government was talking about the payments that we've been making. As an institution, Postbank here, we've been doing a lot of payments for those social payments. And when the government was there talking about it, we were not really seen as one of the key providers of this service. With the digital infrastructure that we have, that visibility, coupled with what the government is able to do, we are able to go out there very strongly and say, Postbank is very strong on this and this aspect of payments. So we need not to really shy away from that. Another key thing is just to have that positive media presence. I think key for us is to stop hiding ourselves at the back, letting people know that we are there. We need to actually come out there, shout ourselves hoarse that we are able to be part of this community and also offer these transformative digital services that are there in place. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the panelists. I think before I take it over to Doreen, just a few key themes that have come out. Leveraging on agent networks to reach the last mile and expanding the ecosystem through the digital marketplace. And we've had a lot of conversation around different kinds of partnerships, you know, PPPs with fintechs and trying to figure out how that will work. And of course, just how we can leverage on the emerging technologies, you know, such as data analytics and the open APIs. So thank you very much. I think over to you, Doreen.
Yes, thank you, everybody. The interest of time, I can see we're already past time. There are so many questions that have come through from the very insightful conversations. We will not be able to take all the questions, but we'll follow through with some feedback via email. So thank you for the questions that you posed. We'll also share a recording of this workshop in a couple of days with you. Now, in the interest of time, allow me to call on to Graham Wright. Is a Group Managing Director for MSC, to give us some closing remarks. Welcome, Graham.
Oops, sorry, I wasn't expecting that. Yeah, I mean, we've worked with post operators now for 2 decades, starting in Kenya with obviously Kenya Postal Savings Bank and also with TPB and Uganda Savings Bank and so on. And now we're privileged to be working with India Postal Payments Bank. What excites us about these postal banks is their sheer reach. The challenges remain, but I really would like to believe that the digital revolution gives us an opportunity to fundamentally change both the image and the operations of postal banks and allow them to reach their full potential and thus serve the vulnerable communities in which many of their outlets are located. Thank you all for attending this webinar. Really appreciate it. It's a very, very important topic. And I hope that we can progress some of the ideas.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Graham. So thank you again to everyone, our participants, our panelists, Juliet. I would like to just extend our heartfelt appreciation for taking the time to be with us today. So allow me to bring this workshop to an end. So as I've mentioned, in a couple of days, we will circulate the recording so that you can be able to keep it for further reference. Just wishing you a nice evening, afternoon, or morning, wherever you are. Goodbye, and thank you.